Fear is the hidden barrier to innovation in high pressure work environments. Today, we're exploring how natural stress responses, from critical AI rollouts to mission critical transformation initiatives, they all undermine creative problem solving and risk taking when we need them most. We'll examine the neuroscience behind how even mild fear narrows thinking and biases us towards conservative choices, precisely the opposite of what high stakes situations demand. Whether you're guiding an agile transformation, leading an AI initiative, or simply striving for more innovation, understanding how to manage the fear factor can transform your outcomes. So, let's explore practical leadership strategies for building psychological safety containers, settings where teams can stretch, experiment, and learn without succumbing to fear based shutdowns. These strategies aren't about lowering standards or removing accountability, quite the opposite. They're about enabling people to bring their full cognitive and creative capacities to overcome the toughest challenges. So, let's start by understanding what I call the innovation paradox. So, what's that all about? At the moments where we need the most innovation to be the most innovative, that's when things are toughest. That's when we have most pressure on us. That's when we have, whether it's the need, the will to get our business to its next level, or get our business started. Maybe this is a new initiative, or we've been established for a while, but we really need to demonstrate that we're doing something different, something better, so that customers will like us more. Whatever the circumstances, or maybe there's been a problem, we need to get past it. These kind of scenarios create a lot of pressure. These are high stakes situations, and these situations are the ones that demand the greatest amount of innovation. Because it's that creativity, that thinking out of the box, that fresh look at things, that's what's going to get us forward. That's what's going to impress our customers. That is what's going to clear whatever issues we may have or deliver the new service. So launches, crisis responses, these are all require novel responses, novel approaches on how to deal with a situation. There could be another situation, for example, market or regulatory deadlines, something that's imposed externally. You have no control over it, and you have to respond as quickly as possible, immediately, sometimes by a given date. You need to be in a clear mind to problem solve to get to to that resolution. And that kind of pressure makes it very difficult to do it. So these kind of situations, high stakes situations that trigger fear responses, that inhibit creativity, these are threat signals that our brain interprets in a way that it's like a saber tooth was chasing us. Our life is being threatened. The brain doesn't know the difference between a saber tooth and a really complicated AI problem that you need to solve. All that it knows is that you feel a threat, and that threat could mean your life. So the brain is structured in such a way that it immediately triggers a response. Instead of broadening our ability to think creatively, expansively, um, what the brain does is that it narrows our focus. Our focus becomes narrowed so that we can figure out exactly where that saber tooth is and where the furthest point that we can run to is located. When our view is narrowed in this way, we're missing the opportunity to come up with creative ideas. If your life is threatened, that's not the moment to try new things and experiment. I don't know. Maybe in some cases you have to. But for the most part, you're under threat. You need to survive. What are you going to rely on? What's kept you alive all this time? That is a conservative approach. And it's a conservative approach that's designed to save us, to save our lives. That's what's happening when we're in high stakes situations. There's a heightened risk aversion that discourages experimentation. And instead, the priority is to just make it through to survive. There's a biological bias that gets triggered when we are under stress response. The amygdala activation, this is what happens. You have a combination of the amygdala jumping in and then cortisol releasing. All of these things are acting together to divert resources, nutrients in our body, that to help us survive. And these are starving from critical thinking areas in our brain, the prefrontal cortex, for example. This is where the big decisions are made. This is where big thinking. This is where you solve puzzles. This is where the slow thinking is happening. You need fast thinking, fast response, fast ability to get you out of the critical, dangerous situation. Now, when we're under this type of a working environment for an extended period of time, now we're under chronic stress. And chronic stress creates additional damage to our brain, to the way that we think. It impairs cognitive decision making. And over time, it can become very difficult to overcome. It has an impact on our ability to focus, to pay attention. Our memory is decreased. Our ability to decision make is also impaired. So our working memory is overloaded, and that leads to tunnel vision because we can't be focusing on many things. We have to just, the ability or is reduced to just focus on what's immediately in front of us. That limits the amount of information that's available to us in order to make decisions. This is the opposite of mindfulness. This is a really, really focused mind that it only sees what's immediately in front of us and not very deeply, just sufficiently so that we can get past the immediate threat. So this kind of working situation, work environment, really leads to a lot of dysfunctions, and we see that in teams. For example, they go into silence. Instead of bringing up all of their concerns, they withhold them and they're in silence. Why? Because it's hard to get into trouble if you just remain silent most of the time. Individuals avoid speaking up to protect themselves. It's not because they're trying to hide things, maybe sometimes, but in general, it's not because they're trying to be deceitful or hiding things. It's just that they don't want to stick their neck out because that's dangerous. Something bad may happen. Early warnings that we could get go unshared until the problem escalates and it's too late. You have to deal with it. By that point, more damage has happened, and it's a greater cost to fix it, and it's more complicated and more painful to deal with. Risk aversion and status quo bias has really settled in. It's a preference for familiar processes over novel solutions. And the reason is not just a naysayer kind of negative attitude. Some people may have it, but in general, that's not what's playing out. It's just simply wanting to survive. And the greatest guarantee that you're going to survive is repeat whatever you did before, because you're still alive, you've still survived. That's what we're going to fall to. That's our default. That's the safe space. Teams prioritize safe choices, even when they're suboptimal. Sometimes the choices that they're making, they know perfectly well that they are a lot of effort, they're difficult, they're complicated, convoluted, unnecessary. Teams know that. When you have a good conversation with teams, they will openly share that, oh, yeah, they know that what they're doing is not the best. And yet they do it. Why? Because it's safe. Okay. Another thing that we see very typically is defensive documentation or over-engineering. Defensive documentation, it's not just protective, but of the individual. So a lot of emails that document everything that we said, we talked about, that kind of stuff. But it's also at the organizational level when you're getting ready to launch something to customers. There are all these gates. You have to sign off, sign off, sign offs. I'm sure that you've gone through it. Something bad happened in the past, and then somebody implemented all of these sign-offs in order to get this stuff out the door. It's a lot of process, a lot of steps, and all that they're designed to do is to hopefully catch things before they hit the customer. There's safety nets that you build in. But the problem with that approach is it's dealing with a symptom. It's not dealing with the root cause. It's not figuring out what led us to be in that situation and addressing it early on. I've done videos before about shift left, where in shift left, we're looking for how to build quality into the process that's building the products and services as we are building them, not afterwards. The priority is not just to rush something out to our customers. Of course, we want to do that as quickly as possible, but that's not the priority. The priority is to get something to our customers that's high quality. That's the key. And the high quality we get there by building it into the process that's creating the process, the products and services that we're developing. So when we don't have that, that's when we have those sign-offs and those gates. It's a process bloat that replaces real learning to avoid needing all of those sign-offs. In organizations that do this well, in organizations that do the shift left and have the proper quality systems to make sure that what we put into production is always high quality, what we tend to see is if you look at their bug logs and their critical defects logs, they tend to be very, very small. They tend to be in the low single digits, as opposed to teams that have all of these amazing, incredibly convoluted gating processes. When you look at their defect systems, they're usually in the thousands. And this is not an exaggeration. I've seen it time and time again. And they're very protective of their of all of their defects. It's you want to see real fireworks, go in and make a recommendation to get rid, just throw away all of those databases full of errors and bugs and critical issues that need to be fixed in the products and services that the people are running. Um, Absolutely not. People don't want to do that. They hold on to them. There's real attachment to them. They document all of the faults that exist currently in the systems that are running. No, no, it's time to wipe the slate clean. It's time to look at things with a fresh eye. It's time to modify the way that we're building the products so that we don't have those thousands of issues to track. And instead, everything that we're putting out has minimal issues to deal with. That's when we have succeeded in establishing the psychological safety to deal with issues at the appropriate time, as opposed to just building backlogs, endless backlogs to deal with them. So, when we have blame dynamics and punishment mindsets, that's when we get to the finger pointing. That finger pointing stalls collaboration. Nobody wants to be at the other end of the finger pointing. And fear of repercussions discourages ownership. When you are in a culture that is just looking for the scapegoat or looking and placing the blame and then going really hard on whomever messed up, nobody wants to own anything. They'll be happy to help. Oh, I'll help from a distance. I don't want to be the one who's carrying the baton on this one. Okay, that's what happens. And that's not an environment conducive to innovation. It's an environment conducive to survival uh, with whatever we have. Don't grow, don't make it bigger. It's hard enough as it is. There's a role distancing. You want to just follow orders. You don't want to be at the lead, at the head, because the head might get chopped off. Team members abdicate responsibility and accountability becomes opaque. It's as diluted as possible. It's like nobody wants to get hurt. Again, the focus, the priority is on survival. It's not on innovation. Forget about innovation. You'll never get to innovation. You'll be lucky if you get to being able to maintain what you have and have it perform decently. That's what we get. And that's the majority of companies, especially large companies. They get stuck in that because there's so much of this fear that doesn't allow for innovation to really happen. There's a real cost associated with having these fear-based cultures. Missed opportunities for early intervention when we could have taken care of the issue at a low cost and quickly. We missed that because nobody was willing to speak up. The warning signs get ignored until the crisis emerges and you have to deal with things. High remediation costs are the result of it because we allow things to get so bad that we get to the point where we have to pivot. And when we have to pivot, usually is in a hurry. We haven't really planned for it, and you have to throw everything that you have at it, again, just to survive. When we could have dealt with it gradually, incrementally, if somebody had said something early on. There's also decreased knowledge sharing. People hoard information because that's part of the safety mechanism. It's like it's self-preservation. Is you put yourself from the perspective that if I hold on to this information, if I'm the only one who has this piece of information, then when something bad happens, I'm not going to be the first one out the door because they're going to think about it. They're going to think about what they're going to lose. It's not a deceitful behavior. It's a survival behavior. That's what's driving people to do that, as opposed to being open and just sharing all of the information that they have. This creates silos at the individual level and silos at the cross-functional teams level. Nobody wants to share anything. You have your departments. It's like little parcels, of land. It's like, get off my land. This is my space. Don't touch it. Go away. Leave me alone. Because you're protecting, you're hoarding the knowledge that you have, the abilities, the capabilities that you have. There's also reduced experimental learning. Why try an experiment? That's dangerous. It could go bad. Well, yeah, experiments go bad. Absolutely, they do all the time. And the point about experimenting is that you want to learn from that experiment. The experiment is taking you to the edge of what you currently do. And that experiment, when it fails, it teaches you something. And from that, you learn how to navigate beyond what's known to you, beyond the limits of what you're comfortable and perfectly capable of doing. That's what helps us grow. If we don't make it safe to fail, we're stalling that learning. We're not creating the environment, the opportunity to always be learning and pushing ourselves. So we have a lot of slow feedback loops because we're not getting that constant experimentation with successes and failures to keep us growing quickly. Instead, we set up for the big test, when everybody's very nervous about it and you give something a try and it doesn't go well. Oh, no, terrible. What happened? And all kinds of terrible questions come along. Um, you want to do that as infrequently as possible. So you're not getting a lot of feedback. And that feedback is so critical to keep us learning and moving always, all the time. Another thing that happens is when we have these fear-based cultures, talent attrition. Good people, capable people, creative people, entrepreneurial minds, they don't want to stick around with that. They don't have to. They can go someplace else where their crazy ideas and their dangerous ideas are actually valued. They have better opportunity to put their experiments out there and learn from them and improve from them than in a company that has this kind of fear-based culture. This leads this kind of culture leads to burnout, disengagement. That drives turnover. After time, people can take it. And whenever that happens, of course, we're going to have loss of institutional knowledge. And that's so difficult. That puts a lot of increases pressure on the people left behind, makes it harder for them to do their jobs. Do you think that somebody who's going through that, if you're in a company that has gone through a lot of layoffs, reduction in task force. Do you think that people are at their best to try new things, to dream up come up with creative ideas? No. On top of everything that they already had, they have to deal with the loss of knowledge that's just happened. And that's just to survive. So no, that doesn't help at all. Another challenge that we get in fear-based cultures is the ethical compromises that people have to make in high-pressure scenarios. They take the shortcuts. They adopt the shortcut behaviors when they're under tight deadlines or when there's a lot on the line. And that creates reputational and compliance risks. When we have a workforce that's always just shielding, protecting, doing the safe things, that can lead to really visible problems. And that can be more costly down the road. So there's a lot of negatives, there's a lot of downsides to having a fear-based culture. And as I've mentioned in other videos, psychological safety is very misunderstood. And it's not just about making it nice and pleasant for people to work in. Absolutely, we want that because we get a lot of benefit from it. And psychological safety is about making it comfortable to have uncomfortable conversations. And those uncomfortable conversations have a purpose. That purpose is to surface things that need to be dealt with, that are priority and important. So in order to establish that, we want to create what we're calling psychologically safe containers. And those containers start by setting clear boundaries and expectations. If we're clear about that, we define scope, roles, and decision rights up front, then people know the limits under which they can operate. It's not a free-for-all, and we're not advocating chaos and anarchy and nothing like that. There is a structure, and that structure creates freedom within that structure. And we want that freedom, people to genuinely feel free within that structure so that they can come up with the creative ideas. That's the space for innovation. We reduce ambiguity, and that fuels threat responses because people are clear, people know. We want to decouple performance from personal growth, framing feedback around outcomes, not individuals. So we're focusing on the thing as a group. Definitely in public setting, we want to be talking about issues, not individuals. If we need to talk about individuals, talk to the individual, not talk about the individual. Very different. That creates a safe environment where people know that they can bring up ideas and talk about them. I want to foster a growth mindset through neutral language, not this accusatory, blaming kind of language, just talking about the issue. This is what happened. What are we going to do about it? We want to normalize uncertainty as part of the process, especially these days. Now, AI, everything is uncertain. We don't know. We don't even know how AI works, let alone the consequences of rolling out an AI system into the wild. Now, what do we do about it? How do we deal with it? Well, there's uncertainty. Let's make it part of the norm because it is the norm today. And it's incrementally becoming more and more. So let's feel comfortable in the discomfort of uncertainty and constant change and just improve our ability to respond to it as quickly and intelligently as possible. And that only happens when we have a clear mind, not when we're under fear. We acknowledge the unknowns explicitly in our planning. When we're heading into something, this is one of the challenges that happens when we try to apply project management mindset to product and service development and delivery. Project management expects clear, predictable execution, and everything is laid out because you need to put together your project plan, and you just need to go task by task by task. Yep, you very, very clearly, you know where you are and you know where you're executing and how you're going. When we apply that mindset to work that is inherently uncertain, the only thing, if we insist on doing that, the only response that we're going to get is people's guesses. And people's guesses are not reliable. That's not predictable. That's not something that we can bank on. There will be deviations from it. This is where there's a misalignment between applying project management mindset to non-project work, to product and service implementation and delivery. So make sure that we have proper alignment. Otherwise, it's creating a lot of conflict just by the process that we're using. We want to establish dedicated challenge spaces. So, for example, these are spaces where it's okay to bring up divergent views and different opinions, where you can run simulations or run stress tests in low stakes settings. So, for what purpose? So we can learn, and from that learning, we can improve. Again, when things go well, okay, yes, that's wonderful, and we can celebrate and all feel good, and we want to have that. That's great. And what really pushes us, what really takes us beyond what we already know, is when something doesn't go as we expected. That's when we learn. That's when we figure out what we hadn't figured out before. Another way to get there is hackathons or war games. These surface risks safely. Okay, these are we're creating the conditions. No, there's a little bit of competition that goes on, and that healthy competition it stimulates people thinking creatively for a purpose. Those things can be very effective to give us a lot of new ideas. Atlassian has done it traditionally and has been very successful. In one day, they get more ideas than through many other methods. Just give people one day to figure out do whatever they want, work on whatever they want. No limits. Just go out and figure out something new. People come up with amazing ideas when we remove a lot of the boundaries that we've created. Another thing that can help us is establishing a role modeling behavior perspective. As leaders, demonstrate that you're vulnerable and have open conversations about it. Leaders share their own uncertainties and failures, and that can encourage peer support, candid discussions. You can become a role model when people hear about the things that have not gone well in your own career, how you've dealt with it, because they can see that you're in a successful place right now and you went through that. That can be very inspiring to a lot of people. So don't be shy. We've put leaders in such high pedestals. Now, again, everything has to be perfect, and the expectations of waterfall, and they can't be anything negative. And the leaders have to have every single answer all the time. That we're actually undermining the potential for people to rise up to those levels of performance by creating this fictitious persona that's really not real. All of us have gone through terrible failures in our careers, and it's how we've come out of them, what we've learned. Sometimes the bigger the failure, the greater the progress that we've made in our careers. I haven't met a single good leader that hasn't gone through that. And that's what we want to be open about and sharing because it works. It gets us to where we need to go. So we want to start, in order to do this, as I always say, start small. Okay, never try to do huge, big changes and shifts. That can be very dangerous. Start small, and then scale in complexity. Pair teams with mentors. So there's real-time coaching. There's so much to be gained by working with somebody who understands what we're doing, who's been there, and who has surpassed wherever we are. Seeing them as a role model and following their lead, their example, learning from what they did, can help us avoid a lot of mistakes ourselves. So we want to dispel a lot of misconceptions about psychological safety. Again, I've said this before, is psychological safety is not about just making it nice, and it also doesn't mean that there are no consequences to what we do. Consequence is not the same thing as punishment. That's the thing that we need to be clear about. We run into problems, and there's a pattern of running into problems. There's going to be a consequence, absolutely. But that doesn't necessarily mean that there's punishment. There's a difference between the two. We need to really convey, not just through words, but through actions, that learning through failure is okay. We don't expect for there to be no failure. I'm much more impressed by a team that responds quickly, efficiently, effectively to failure than I am from a team that pretends that everything is perfect all the time, or that aspires that everything is perfect all the time, or the leadership that expects everything to be perfect all the time. That's, if it's possible, which I've never seen, but if it's possible, that's way too brittle. And I would really question, how will this team respond when something goes wrong? If instead I see a team that responds very well to when things go wrong, I'm very confident that the team will always be able to figure out their way through any situation that they're facing. We want to maintain high standards. Absolutely. I'm not talking about lowering standards, and I'm not talking about, oh, well, the team is always messing up and they're always getting themselves out of it, so it's okay. No, we want to maintain high standards, okay, without punitive fear. We want to separate mistakes, genuine, honest mistakes. That's a process issue from misconduct. That's intent. If you have somebody who has an intent, a misconduct problem, of course we need to deal with that. But if it's genuine mistakes because we didn't know, we weren't prepared, whatever the circumstances, learn what the process issue was and improve that so that it doesn't happen again. That's our opportunity to make sure that in future, we're not going to have a repeat of these, whatever the issue is. And we want to enforce norms. This is not something that we have a conversation just once and then forget about it. And we have a nice chat about it, a day off, and we talk about it, and then move on as regular. No, We want to have those conversations, establish the norms, and then reinforce them through coaching constantly, helping people grow, not punishing, but helping them grow and reach the potential that we know we're capable of and we want them to get to. So we want to distinguish consequences from punishment. And we want to use restorative practices to rebuild trust when there have been problems, when there have been failures. We want to deal with the root cause so that they don't repeat. And that demonstrates that there is growth. If we know that there's growth as leaders, we should be perfectly comfortable understanding that things are not going to always go well, and we have the capability of going past them. And we want to apply consistent, transparent criteria for accountability. When we do, when we treat people differently, different people differently, when we're not consistent, when we respond one way in one situation and a completely different in another, that creates a lot of confusion, and people just don't know how we're going to respond, and that creates fear in itself. Even if we're trying to establish psychological safety, it doesn't work because we're unpredictable. We want, just as we want to see consistent performance from our teams, we in leadership need to be consistent in our responses and our messages. Walk the talk, okay, and be consistent about it. We want to create learning oriented accountability frameworks. Those that integrate retrospectives, for example, that are focused on improvements. I've mentioned before, and I restate, so important. If we're going to establish a practice of retrospectives, make sure to take action on them. If we don't take action and we just talk about things and we surface valid issues and we never resolve them, that will kill the practice and then we don't get the benefit from it. So we need to be really proactive and follow through in making sure that we address whatever issues have been raised during those retrospectives. So establishing psychological safety, there's a lot of practices and there's a lot of effort, and it takes time. Consistency in our leadership and in our communications is so important so that everybody can count on it, can trust the process, can trust the way that we're relating to each other, just as we are trusting how the teams are performing. And that takes time. Failures are going to happen. We need to respond to them appropriately, not over respond, not under response, not ignoring things, and make sure that we create the environment where it's safe to try things so that teams are continuously and individuals are continuously learning and growing. When it comes to AI, of course, there are high stakes. Of course, the speed of AI and the complexity and the breadth of what AI covers is so huge that the opportunity for derailments and challenges just keeps growing bigger and bigger and bigger. And that means that we need to get to figure this out. It means that we really need to know how to respond appropriately to challenges when they arise, and that we need to create the environment that is going to empower teams to think through, to have the tough conversations. Because if we don't do that, then bad things are going to happen in the wild. And with AI, they can be really, really, really big and really impactful and really damaging. So we need to be very careful about that. AI really raises the stakes at all levels. It raises the stakes of complexity of implementation, of delivery, of performance, response from the teams. How do you respond at the speed that AI is doing things? There's a lot of complexity there, and we really need for people to be at their best. And we can only get there by creating the environment that allows them to be at their best. So there are things that can get in the way, and that's a lot of old ways of managing things. As I always say, there's no such thing as a wrong way, and there are different ways of managing different types of work. And we need to make sure that we have the proper alignment to the type of work that we're doing. So if we have the project and the project management approach, that's perfectly fine. If we have products and services, then we need to manage those differently with the different approaches that we keep talking about. So In that spirit, if you'd like to learn more about mastering high pressure innovation or building truly resilient teams that are freed from the Theory X management assumptions, click one of these. I'll be happy to tell you all about it.